Okay, let's unpack this. We've all felt it, right? That internal heat, the tight chest, maybe just a flicker of annoyance or sometimes something huge that feels like it could just consume you. Anger.
Mm,
It's one of the most powerful, universal human emotions. And honestly, it gets a pretty bad rap.
it really does. We often see it as just negative,
Well,
destructive.
exactly. But what if we reframed it a bit? What if we saw anger not just as a problem, but maybe as a signal, like an indicator that something important feels wrong or threatened inside us?
Yeah, I like that framing, a signal, because we tend to focus only on the, let's say, the outward eruption of anger, the shouting, maybe the
The
confrontation.
obvious stuff.
Yeah, the obvious stuff. But that signal, it can manifest in other really crucial ways too, ways that are often less visible, like shutting down emotionally.
Ah, okay. So the opposite end of the spectrum almost.
Exactly. That withdrawal, that kind of going numb, it's really the flip side of the same coin,
Right.
It's also indicating a struggle with some really intense feeling.
Absolutely. And how we learn to understand and respond to this signal, whatever form it takes, feels absolutely critical for our well-being, our health, and, well, frankly, the health of our relationships.
Couldn't agree more.
So for this deep dive, we're going to take a really close look at this complex emotion. We've pulled insights from a whole stack of sources you've shared with us, everything from like therapeutic resources and psychological associations to relationship guides and even some really raw personal experiences shared in online communities.
Yeah, a good mix of perspectives there.
Definitely. So our mission today is really to decode that signal. We want to unpack what anger is, how it shows up, including that often missed emotional shutdown, maybe explore why it feels so darn challenging to manage effectively.
Mm.
And most importantly, dig into the practical techniques you can actually use to respond safely and constructively. Navigating the power of this emotion without either blowing up or just disappearing inwards.
Right. Finding that balance.
Exactly. So maybe let's start by understanding anger's dual nature. Because our sources, they consistently highlight that it's not inherently bad.
That's a really key point. Organizations focused on therapy, like cognitive behavioral approaches and counseling services, they point out that anger is actually a normal, even necessary human emotion.
Necessary, huh?
Yeah. When it's understood and expressed appropriately, it can actually be a driver for healthy coping and even constructive change.
Okay, so it's kind of like that check engine light we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. You don't really want to see it flashing.
Right.
But its purpose is to tell you something needs attention so you can actually fix it.
Precisely. And anger isn't just one single thing, is it? It exists on a really wide spectrum. Some sources note it can range from just mild irritation or feeling a bit annoyed,
Mhm.
all the way up to intense rage or fury.
And how that signal shows up, externally or internally, that varies hugely too, right? It's not just the yelling and shouting we kind of picture.
Not at all. Some sources mention things like intimidation or even aggression that could harm yourself, others, or property. But, and this is where we need to broaden our understanding, it can also manifest by staying completely inside.
Okay. How so?
Well, some individuals show very little outward sign. They might be harboring fantasies of getting even or just holding on to these really deep resentments. You wouldn't necessarily know it from the outside.
Wow. Okay. And this leads us right to that other key manifestation we mentioned, emotional shutdown.
Exactly. This is a distinct coping mechanism. Some sources describe it as withdrawing, physically or emotionally, feeling numb, detached, actively avoiding difficult conversations.
Or maybe struggling to even figure out or say what you need.
Yes, exactly that. It's a kind of disconnection that's really born from being overwhelmed by the emotion.
So whether the signal causes you to explode outwards or kind of freeze inwards, what are the real costs?
Yeah.
Because they sound pretty significant.
They are. The impact is really far-reaching. Both uncontrolled anger and emotional shutdown, they create major friction and damage in relationships, with friends, family, partners, coworkers.
Yeah, I could see that.
And some sources even note that extreme anger can sometimes lead to, well, legal issues.
Oof. Okay. And beyond the relational stuff, are there physical costs?
Oh, definitely. Tangible physical health impacts. In the moment, you might get headaches or stomach problems, right? We've all felt that.
Sure.
But longer term, chronic uncontrolled anger is potentially linked to some serious conditions like heart disease, elevated blood pressure, maybe even increased risk factors for cancer.
Wow.
And crucially, the sources focusing on emotional shutdown specifically highlight that suppressing emotions over time is also linked to decreased physical and mental health. So holding it in isn't harmless either.
Right. It's not a safer option, necessarily. And the mental health toll.
Profound. For those who tend to bottle up anger, it can lead to just Constant anguish, inner turmoil, lower self-esteem, definitely heightened anxiety.
Hmm.
And sadly, sometimes even substance abuse struggles as a way to try and cope.
Hmm. Mm.
And similarly, suppressing emotions generally, it often increases stress, anxiety, and depression because you're just not processing what you feel. It's stuck.
And the damage to intimacy and relationships sounds pretty stark too, especially with the shutdown piece.
Absolutely. Emotional shutdown really erodes that connection. It can leave partners feeling unwanted or distant. It naturally leads to more misunderstandings because nothing's being clearly communicated.
Yeah, you're not resolving anything.
Exactly. Incomplete conflict resolution. Issues are avoided or just left simmering, and that leads to lingering resentment, often on both sides. Unaddressed problems just tend to escalate over time.
Okay, so given all these downsides, the relational costs, the physical ones, the mental toll, why is it so incredibly hard for so many of us to manage this powerful signal effectively? It seems like something we'd want to get a handle on.
It's a great question, and one major reason our sources point to is that these patterns, whether expressing anger outwardly or suppressing it, they're often deeply ingrained habits.
Habits, huh?
Yeah, as highlighted by therapeutic resources and even discussions in online communities, these responses have usually been developed, repeated, and reinforced over a lifetime. And breaking a habit you've practiced for maybe decades, that's challenging work.
That makes sense. It's automatic.
It becomes automatic.
Yeah.
And frequently, the anger itself or the
Yeah.
shutdown isn't actually the root emotion you're feeling.
Oh, interesting. Like it's covering something else up.
Exactly. Resources like relationship guides and platforms focused on emotional well-being emphasize that anger is often a secondary emotion. It might be masking something deeper like fear, stress, grief, loneliness, shame, disappointment, even just pure exhaustion or anxiety.
So you lash out because you're actually feeling overwhelmed or scared?
Precisely. One source particularly noted how many individuals struggle with managing anger because they're kind of using it to hide underlying anxiety or stress they don't know how else to deal with.
Which connects to another challenge, I guess. Maybe underdeveloped emotional intelligence or communication skills?
Absolutely. If you haven't really learned to identify what you're truly feeling beneath that surface layer of anger,
Hmm.
or you don't know how to express your needs and boundaries assertively without aggression or withdrawal, then anger or shutdown might feel like the only tools you have available.
You react because you don't know how else to respond.
You got it. Chronic stress and just general emotional overload also play a huge role. When you're constantly under pressure, dealing with too much, your emotional resources just get depleted,
Running on empty.
totally running on empty. And as the emotional shutdown sources explain, this makes you far more susceptible to flipping into either lashing out impulsively or just disconnecting entirely when faced with even minor triggers. You just don't have the capacity left to regulate.
Wow. And our early life experiences, or maybe long-standing relationship dynamics, do they wire us for this stuff?
Big time. Some sources note that if you grew up in an environment with, say, neglect, inconsistency, or trauma, you might learn to suppress emotions just to survive. Your system effectively gets trained to shut down.
Okay.
Conversely, you might learn to react really intensely if that was the pattern modeled around you. Unresolved trauma, in particular, can really overwhelm the nervous system, making healthy emotional regulation incredibly difficult without some dedicated support.
Okay, so we're talking about these deeply ingrained habits, often masking other feelings, made worse by stress, potentially rooted way back in our past experiences. It sounds like a pretty complex knot to untangle.
Mm.
How do we even begin to get a handle on this signal and learn to respond differently?
Well, the first crucial step, pretty much all our sources agree, is becoming aware. You have to be able to decode the signal, recognize its appearance in you.
Awareness.
Oh, yeah.
So how do we build that?
It starts with identifying your triggers. What situations, what behaviors from others, maybe even specific topics consistently set you off.
Like traffic,
Mm.
or feeling disrespected,
Yeah.
criticism.
Exactly. Or specific behaviors from a partner. One online discussion mentioned how topics like politics can be really intense triggers for a lot of people.
Right. Recognizing those triggers is powerful, isn't it? Because while some are unavoidable, you can't control the traffic jam.
Nope.
You can, as some sources point out, learn to control your response to them. It shifts you from feeling like a victim of your triggers to having some agency over your reaction.
That's the goal, and equally important is learning to recognize your body's physical warning signs. These are like your system's internal alarm bells telling you that the anger signal is activating.
What kind of signs are we talking about?
Well, common ones include things like a tight chest, feeling hot or flushed, maybe grinding your teeth, noticing your muscles getting tense, clenching your fists, or your heart starting to race.
Okay, I recognize some of those.
Yeah, most people do when they stop to think about it. Spotting these early gives you this crucial window of opportunity, maybe just precious seconds, sometimes minutes, to use coping strategies before you fully react or shut down.
Got it. Catch it early.
Catch it early. And then actively pausing to ask yourself, okay, why am I feeling this anger right now? What is this signal actually trying to tell me?
Mm.
One source suggests this internal check helps make sure your response, when it comes, is actually proportionate and directed at the real issue, not just the immediate spark that lit the fuse.
That's interesting. I saw one comment somewhere suggesting that if you ask that question honestly, you often find that maybe 90% of the intensity of your anger isn't really reasonable for the situation itself. It's tied to something deeper or older.
That's a powerful insight. That self-reflection is absolutely key. So once you're aware that the emotion is building and you have maybe some sense of its source, you need actionable techniques, right? Tools to manage that energy and message constructively, deliberately avoiding both the explosive outbursts and the quiet withdrawal.
Okay, let's get practical. What about in the moment cooling down techniques?
Right. A widely recommended strategy across multiple sources, therapeutic guides, clinics, relationship experts, even personal accounts, is taking a time out. Physically removing yourself from the situation if possible.
Just stepping away.
Stepping away, allowing your body and mind to cool down, gain some perspective.
What's the crucial part there, especially if maybe you tend to shut down or just abandon conversations?
Great question. The crucial part is to communicate this need clearly and ideally commit to returning. Saying something like, look, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I need a few minutes to think, or let's take a break and circle back to this later.
Okay, so you're not just walking out.
No, it's a strategy, not an escape. And give yourself adequate time. One source notes it can take 20 minutes or even longer for your body's physiological arousal from anger to actually calm down. So don't rush back in 5 minutes still boiling.
Good point. What if you can't physically leave? Like you're in a meeting or something?
Yeah, then distraction techniques can be helpful. Engage in a non-angry activity for a few minutes, even mentally. Count backwards from 100. Focus on a specific song playing faintly. Do a quick, unrelated task if possible. Press your fingers together firmly under the table. Splash water on your face if you can get to a restroom.
Okay.
Some people even find a safe, private space for a quick, intense release helpful, like yelling into a pillow later, screaming in your parked car, maybe talking it out to a wall, or just scribbling down angry thoughts without any filter. These can help release that physical tension safely.
Right. And relaxation skills. Those seem fundamental.
Absolutely. For directly calming the nervous system when anger flares, or even when you feel that urge to shut down because you're overwhelmed, deep, slow breathing is a core technique mentioned everywhere.
Just focusing on the breath.
Yeah, inhaling deeply through your nose, exhaling slowly through your mouth. Repeating calming words or phrases to yourself, take it easy, I can handle this. Picturing a peaceful scene, or even progressively tensing and then releasing different muscle groups.
And does practicing these help?
Definitely. The more you practice these when you're calm, the faster and more effectively they'll work when you're actually stressed or angry. It becomes more automatic.
Mindfulness and grounding, too. How do they fit in?
Hugely important. They help you stay present when those strong emotions are trying to pull you into reacting or disconnecting. Checking in with your body sensations without judgment, just noticing, okay, my chest feels tight right now, my jaw is clenched.
Just observing it.
Just observing it. And grounding exercises like the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Count 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you hear, 2 you smell, 1 you taste. These anchor you right back in the present moment, makes it harder for the emotional intensity to spiral or for you to detach.
Okay, those are great in-the-moment tools. What about changing the underlying patterns, the thinking?
Crucial for longer-term management, and sometimes it's surprisingly simple to start, like just practicing thinking before you speak.
Sounds basic, but probably hard in the heat of the moment.
It is. But taking even those few extra seconds to collect your thoughts before reacting impulsively can prevent a ton of regretted words or actions.
Yeah. And what about challenging those angry thoughts themselves?
That's a core technique in things like cognitive behavior therapy or CBT. Identifying those demanding, rigid thoughts that fuel anger, things like, this must be my way,
Hmm.
or this is awful, it's a catastrophe.
Okay.
And then consciously working to replace them with more reasonable, flexible thoughts like, okay, I strongly prefer things this way, but it's not actually a disaster if they aren't, or this is difficult and frustrating, yes, but I can handle it. It's about challenging that automatic, often exaggerated interpretation.
Like that 90% point is my reaction really matching the situation.
Exactly. Challenging the automatic thought is how you start to reclaim control over the emotional response.
What about humor? Some sources mention that.
Yeah, using silly humor can be surprisingly effective.
Hmm.
Not laughing away the problem, and definitely not sarcasm, which is often just anger in disguise. But using genuine, maybe even absurd humor to gain a bit of perspective, take the heat out of the moment. One example given was imagining someone you're angry with, someone you might internally call an ass. Literally picturing them as a donkey wearing a silly hat.
Okay. I can see how that might diffuse things a little.
It's hard to stay absolutely furious when you're picturing that.
True. And then there's acceptance and forgiveness. That sounds deeper.
It is. It involves understanding that other people's behavior isn't always malicious or intentional. Sometimes people are forgetful, stressed out themselves, or they just misunderstand things.
Giving them the benefit of the doubt, maybe.
Sometimes. And letting go of grudges, letting go of the need to blame, focusing instead on the only thing you truly have control over, your own response and your future actions. Forgiving someone who angered you often more for your own peace than for theirs can really strengthen relationships and prevent that corrosive bitterness from taking root.
There was that story someone shared, like a Buddhist parable, but not accepting a gift.
Yeah, essentially, if someone tries to hand you their anger, their negativity, like a gift, and you refuse to accept it, who is left holding it?
The person who offered it.
Exactly. Don't accept the gift of someone else's anger. Don't let it become yours to carry.
Powerful idea. Okay, so we've talked about cooling down, changing thinking. What about changing behavior and building new habits?
This is the active part, where you put things into practice consistently. And assertive communication is absolutely essential here. It's recommended by pretty much everyone,
Yeah.
meaning expressing your point of view, your concerns, your needs clearly, directly, and respectfully, but without being aggressive, without blaming, without trying to control the other person. It's about stating your truth.
And using I statements.
Yes, using I statements is key. I felt upset when X happened because rather than blaming you always do X or you never. This is particularly vital for people prone to shut down because it gives them a framework to actually identify and then express the needs they might otherwise suppress.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Developing emotional awareness as a daily practice sounds important too, especially for avoiding shutdown.
absolutely. Practicing identifying and just naming your feelings throughout the day, even when things are calm. Just noticing, okay, right now I'm feeling a little anxious or, I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Building that muscle.
Exactly. The more you practice that self-connection, the better you can stay aware of what's happening inside you when stress or conflict does arise, making emotional shutdown less likely because you're not suddenly blindsided by the feeling.
And creating space to process. We touched on that with timeouts.
Yeah, it's a key behavioral strategy. If you feel yourself reaching overload in a conversation, explicitly communicate that you need a break to process. And this is the crucial bit, commit to returning to the discussion later. It's a healthy boundary, not an avoidance tactic.
Okay. And practicing self-soothing, what does that involve?
It's about building your distress tolerance, your ability to cope with difficult feelings and situations without becoming completely overwhelmed or resorting to those unhealthy coping mechanisms like lashing out or shutting down. Using techniques like deep breathing or grounding during difficult moments helps build that capacity over time. You learn you can handle it.
Addressing underlying stress seems huge too.
Critical. If you're constantly running on empty because of work, family stuff, money worries, whatever, your fuse is naturally going to be shorter. Managing that chronic stress through setting boundaries, maybe reprioritizing things, and definitely consistent self-care, sleep, exercise, time outdoors, builds your overall resilience.
Makes sense. What about enhancing specific skills?
Yeah, sometimes anger comes from feeling helpless or frustrated because you lack effective skills for handling certain situations. Maybe it's managing finances with a partner, dealing with kids' misbehavior, being assertive with a difficult coworker. Identifying those skill gaps and actively learning and rehearsing better strategies can actually reduce the triggers for your anger.
Interesting. So learning how to have that specific difficult conversation better.
Exactly. And finding healthy outlets for physical and emotional energy is a classic for a reason. Regular physical activity, running, lifting, dancing, whatever works for you, helps release physical tension and channel energy constructively. Hobbies, creative outlets, they also provide positive ways to manage stress and process emotions.
And finally, reflection and practice seem to tie it all together.
Totally. Reflecting on past angry episodes or moments where you shut down after they've happened can give you such valuable insights into your triggers, your warning signs, your automatic patterns. Managing anger and emotional shutdown isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a skill set you build consciously.
And it takes time.
It takes consistent practice and patience. Changing these deeply ingrained habits doesn't happen overnight. Slow progress is absolutely okay, and it's still progress.
It's also important to know when maybe you need more help, right? When to seek support.
Absolutely critical. If anger or emotional shutdown feels severe, if it's happening frequently, if it's significantly impacting your life, your relationships, your work seeking professional help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
What kind of help?
Counseling, psychotherapy, therapy, it provides a safe space to unpack the roots of these patterns, whether they stem from past trauma, attachment issues, or just learned behaviors. Therapists can help you develop personalized strategies and skills. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, often comes up as particularly effective for anger.
And maybe couples counseling if it's impacting a relationship.
Definitely. That can be invaluable for shifting problematic dynamics that might be triggering these responses in the first place.
Are there ever physical reasons for irritability?
Sometimes, yes. Some people mention online that checking in with a doctor is worthwhile, ruling out underlying issues like chronic sleep deprivation, maybe diet factors like too much caffeine, or even physical problems like neck tension or pain. Sometimes these things can surprisingly exacerbate emotional reactivity.
Worth checking out. And just talking to people you trust.
A simple but powerful outlet. Expressing frustration to someone you trust, gaining perspective as long as you're sharing your feelings without projecting blame onto them, it can really help lighten the load.
Okay. So, to try and synthesize everything we've explored in this deep dive, managing anger isn't about getting rid of it entirely or just stuffing it down until you eventually explode.
Right. Nor is it about just letting it control you or disconnecting completely through shutdown.
It's more about recognizing that anger and that counterpart, emotional shutdown, are really powerful signals. They indicate that something important within you, or maybe around you, needs attention.
Exactly. The goal isn't to silence the signal, but to learn how to listen to its message. To become intimately aware of your specific patterns, whether you tend towards lashing out or withdrawing, or maybe a mix of both.
And then actively building that repertoire of techniques we talked about.
Yeah. Techniques to pause, to decode the underlying message. Maybe challenge those unhelpful thoughts, communicate your needs assertively, regulate your nervous system when you feel overwhelmed, and just process your emotions constructively.
It sounds like a journey towards responding skillfully, rather than just reacting automatically.
That's a great way to put it. And ultimately, that skillful response builds stronger relationships and definitely a healthier relationship with yourself.
This is absolutely a journey, isn't it? A journey of self-discovery and continuous skill building.
For sure. It's ongoing work.
So, perhaps the final thought to leave everyone with from this deep dive is this. Just consider for a moment how much energy uncontrolled anger, whether it's the explosive kind or the suppressive kind, how much energy that consumes in your life.
That's a good question.
And what small shift in awareness, or maybe one small action starting today, might free up just a little bit of that energy for something else.
Or maybe shifting the perspective slightly. What is your anger, or perhaps your tendency to shut down? What is it truly trying to tell you about your unmet needs, maybe your boundaries or your core values? What message have you possibly been missing?
Lots to think about there. This conversation is really just the starting point, isn't it?
Absolutely. Hopefully a helpful one.
Keep exploring, keep practicing those techniques, and keep diving deep into understanding yourself.